Now, when I take my chart, my Mars is in Scorpio. It's conjunct Mercury, square Pluto and Saturn. So it's afflicted Mars. Okay, but the Mars, my Mars is the furthest out. It's at the 15 degrees. Mercury's at 13, Pluto's at 13, Saturn's at about 7. And so my Mars moves direct. So from the time I was born, it was really dangerous, but then I began to move away from it all my life. It just went direct all my life. I'm not sure when it went retrograde or when it will go. It's not going to go retrograde in my life. I'm in the direct phase. So in my life, it goes Scorpio into Sag into Capricorn. Just like my sun goes up into Capricorn. Everything piles up in Capricorn. I'm going to be a grumpy old man. Maybe I'm already that, but just they pile up in Capricorn towards the end for the last part of my life. What fun. And you know, so you could see Mars is your force, and I have the Scorpio. Don't tell me what I can't do. I have to compete. I have to have this competitive Mars. It goes along. When I went to Sag, I wanted to expand it. I traveled. I went around the world. I wanted all kinds of adventures. By the time it goes into Capricorn, I'm a grandpa. I got a bad back. I got a bad knee. So like, I can't. It's more difficult Saturn rulership to move around. There's been a natural process. I'm still got my Mars. Of course, still don't tell me I can't do something. I'm still going to do it, whether I should or shouldn't. I still have my Mars and Scorpio. But this inner attitude, it's the experiences you accumulate and the way you accumulate them across a lifetime. Now, there's another interesting thing with progressions, how they're affected by transits. It's like, depending how far you're, or if, say, Saturn comes and hits my Mars. Okay, it's going to have some crises or something that would build up, or Uranus, Neptune, if something hits the Mars, it's going to make a big effect when it hits the Mars. It's going to, when I'm younger, I have a short reaction speed, but as I get older, as my Mars progresses, it's not till that planet goes past how far Mars has progressed before you've dealt with the repercussions of it. So the older you are, the longer it takes you to react to the things that happened, or the more time you have to reflect on what and to see the depth of the scope of the things you've done. But the progressions always move a little forward or backward. They're moving distinct from the natal chart. So that distance, that space that has moved from the natal chart, that's evolved from the natal chart, is the space that when the transits go over that period, it's still the space, it's still interacting. Now, I don't work with transits, with progressions to transits or transits to progressions. I work to progressions to your natal chart, the transits to your natal chart. But this is something where you can see that there's a widening effect in this process. Don't worry about that. We got a lot to think about before we we'll get to this a little bit more next level. But in this going through, I can see those 3 steps: the Mars, Scorpio, athletic, gymnastic, until I was angry, and we moved from the small town. I came into a city, and it was much more challenging, much more social, much more interactive. And my Mars became more adventurous, but also angrier and things, and it played out. So I can see this Mars rulership, the Jupiter rulership, and then the Saturn rulership coming in the completion of this. So in this process, it's going to go over my IC, my motivation point. Everything goes over my IC, which opposes the midheaven. And it goes over my Venus. Okay, so these are, inside of that, you're going to have the pentans and the hexagrams. So and it's going to touch. You can see the stars just going to touch. Almost the same ones as the sun's touched. When you're working with the whole chart, it's nice to see the whole chart because you can automatically see, like if I'm just looking with, here's the close-up of the Mars going on, I won't so quickly see that it's squaring the Pluto and that's squaring the Pluto, but in my life, the Mars moves away from that Pluto. So, and away from the Saturn. So, growing up being afraid of your dad or being in a violent circumstance, I move more and more away from it. Okay, so like we got our reports, and we got our computer plans give us the exact times of all these things. We can see what it's going through just by looking closely, and you're going to see the stages that it goes through. So it's not likely you're going to read every one from the beginning all the way through. You're going to see where you are now, or where it might be at a certain date, or if you're going to get married, what's going on when it's there, or you're going to start a business, your own business, or you want to retire. Then you may look at what's happening at that point, and you get all the different messages, all the information around it. So you have the signs, you have all the layers of the signs, daily increasing, darkness increasing. For mine, it goes over the solstice, over the greatest darkness point. Okay, my sun does, my progressed sun does, my progressed Mars does, my, yeah, so these are, for me, I have a lot of things going over the same thing. I attribute that to having lived very strongly in studying and learning. In my life, not so much ambition. I'm ambitious in my way, but I don't never fit in. I just do my own thing. But I've got my experiences. There's a line in a Bob Dylan song that I always liked. Know your song well before you start singing it. Get your experiences before you start talking about it. So a lot of people learn about astrology, but they haven't integrated it to their experiences quite as much as they should. But it's still interesting. That's how you get in, and then it gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and you keep going. It's like a book that never ends. It keeps getting more and more interesting. Whew. Okay, so I can see I start with my Mars starts in a Capricorn phase. Capricorn Pentan goes into Aquarius Pentan and into a Pisces. And so then in my 20s at some point, or in my 20s, we'll get to the exact time, it goes into Sag and the Aries, and there's a much more surge of energy. And you're going to see these different phases come through. So for years, you would just almost work with the ephemeris, or you got your ephemeris, so you have the dates. You don't have this. This is just an ephemeris that gives you the pentans and the subpentans and the hexagrams and the lines of the hexagrams. The hexagram name, number, line, and whether it's active or passive. You see the minus or passive. So my Mars to start with, it's in hexagram 12, line 3, broken line, minus. It's a passive line. It's hexagram 24, line 4, passive line. 62, line 1, passive line. So my Mars tends to be, people know I'm really pumped, but I'm really withdrawn and in myself. So my Mars is really internalized a lot. I hate bullies, I hate violence. And but I ran into them growing up, but I had a tendency to push this, and use my force going inward. So then it goes along, and since this goes up to winter solstice, like as it goes through the sign, it's going to go up, and there'll be more and more passive lines, more and more passive lines till it gets past that, till it gets to the greatest darkness. So on this here, it's just started after. So I'm just after in the Capricorn phase in the Pentans for the first 5 years. Then yes, Libra. It goes through each. So you can follow each of these things, and you add people, add situations. If you've got your history out, you've made a thorough history. This helps you recapture it. It's amazing how you can put the stories back together. You can see what happened. Oh my goodness, that was that. Oh gee, oh isn't that interesting? And you start to rediscover meaning and relevance of things that happened in your lifetime. So this puts all of it, like as it goes in, like I've marked the semi-squares. Here's the opposition when I hit the IC. It was in 1965, so I'm 19. And I hit my Venus, it's a degree or two degrees away in 67, 2 years later. So I'm 21. So those were 2 years on my own traveling around before I went to India. So looking back, I can see, yeah, when I was younger, well, yeah, Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco, Greenwich Village, people were getting stoned, getting laid, everybody's kind of indulging, but it was great and it was horrible. Nobody was necessarily that stable or that sincere. People didn't always stay together. So to me, that was wild oats time. And rather out of the house, get out of the house, mad, leave home. But then I started having relationships, but they were, looking back, they look gross to me now. I'd be embarrassed to see those things now, but it happened then. And then I went past that. Then I went through all my atonements and sitting in the cave and sitting in and being alone to meditate, to try and come to terms. So what happened? How come? Well, how come is I started with a Mars-Pluto square and there was harshnesses that when someone gets to know me, that intensity is tends to be too demanding on a relationship. It took me a long time to see that before I made before I could stop making those demands again. And as I did, I stopped having relationships. I've just been on my own. So in my older life, I live a celibate life, and I have more control over the Mars energies to some degree. I certainly don't have the difficult things happen. So when you have all the dates and all the timings goes through, we've been through these things. So for Mars, there's about 6 of these sheets. And we're going to go, but this is really giving us the timings to, now these equations that were done and were made in the last century, in the 1880s and in 1980s and 1990s. And there's more accurate equations right now. So some of these little things happen with the ephemeris that we'll run across a couple of them now, but hopefully I get to redo it with new equations and get these things working as a modern app. So this gives us all our dates and all our events, all the time factors. Okay, so then when we're coming to our star graphs of all the stars in the sky, and we have the Scorpio, we can see here you can see the Capricorn, Pentan, the Aquarius, the Pisces, and we put Mars where it starts, we'll just draw the line in. And then whenever there was an aspect, we write the timing in. And we can more or less, if we want to find where it hits that degree, we can go to the sheets before the ephemeris and get the printouts and get the exact dates for when it changes each degree and stuff. But this was enough because I could get the main points and then I could see the phases going between this. So here, my Chris Mars trine my moon, 1952. Don't forget, there's all sorts of things going on in your life. But I'm telling you, this is an attitude. We had my family split up, they got back together, we were living very poor, and we finally moved into a house in St. Lambert on the edge of the river. To me, it was the greatest house we ever had. But it was an old house. It was cheap, it was an old house, and the floors had about a 12-inch drop from one end of the floor to the other because it didn't have a foundation on the basements on the bank of the river, and it was moving. So it was an old house in its last years, but we got it, and I grew up. We had 3 or 4 years in that place. It was great. Toys would run, cars would run down the road. It was, I think for my parents, one blink and people would think they were already tipsy because the floors were a little tippy. But that was an old place, but it was by the river. I had great adventures. It was like my nicest memories come from those times, even though they were